This ongoing investigation into the bullying scandal that led to such a tragedy with the late MBC weathercaster Oh Yoanna is just making me sick to my stomach, especially now that we've seen an intersection with how it affects and really directly now involves a key member of the BTS producing team. Yes, Pdogg, who sometimes is known as the young or the older brother of BTS or the eighth member of BTS, but somebody who has been instrumental in creating some of the biggest hits for BTS and also big hit music, is involved now through his fiance in this Oh Yoanna MBC weather scandal. And just like the K-drama of it all, new developments are showing that there are a lot of strange twists and turns to this story. And we're not saying that Pdogg is doing anything wrong or he's actively involved in the wrong aspect of this, but he is just really close to the fire. And I wanted to give you an update and also to just give credit where credit is due, or give the news the way that it should be presented without any kind of, bias one way or the other. But this is just getting really crazy because it seems as if there are some twists and turns that really come out of a K-drama where you don't even know who the real villain is. So specifically, what is the connection between the BTS world and this MBC weathercasting world that resulted in the tragedy of Oh Yoanna? Anna for short, that was her moniker, so we'll just call her Anna. Anna was a weathercaster at MBC, and evidence and also interviews by her family have really pointed to a horrible, intense, years-long bullying culture that led Oh Yoanna to make a very final and tragic decision with herself. You can refer to the last video. But why is there this intersection? Well, we know publicly that Pdogg, the producer of many BTS songs, and a weathercaster at MBC who is embroiled in the middle of this bullying scandal, publicly announced their relationship last February. That's when they went officially public. And it looks like, from that time, there has been, he put a ring on it and they are engaged to be married. Now, who is this person? We know from the reports it's Kim Ga Young, and she's the weathercaster who is allegedly part of the cadre of four, like the quartet of bullies who are bullying Yoanna, or Anna. We're calling her Anna, right? So Pdogg, if you're not familiar, is a record producer and songwriter for big hit music. He produced for BTS, but other artists as well. He even, I think, did a song for Glam when that was going on. And he got his start in 2007 when he was 25. He was tasked with managing an online composing community where he uploaded some of his musical compositions, and it was well received. It got the attention of big hit CEO at the time, Bang Si-hyuk. And so he has been, really beloved in the music industry, and I'm sure you guys probably know a lot more about Pdogg and how he has contributed to some of the hits for BTS. And again, we're still getting the developments, and we're not saying that he's been doing anything wrong here, and we're not saying for certain that Kim Ga Young has done also anything wrong, but there's a lot of Jezebelian smoke, and he's getting a little bit too close to all of that. And so the online community in Korea is really saying, like, Pdogg, come on, reconsider. Maybe the ring has passed its return policy window, but if you really are going to take a good look at this, perhaps this is not the best scenario for you to have a lifelong commitment in. Again, we don't know all of the details, but it does seem as if we have had already a JIT graduate create all sorts of chaos within Hybe, namely New Jean's mama, because New Jean's mama came in as somebody trusted and somebody who they were going to have a very long business relationship with, and turns out, wow, the betrayal is real. And a lot of the times, targets of JIT graduates are essentially these types of guys, and they may not exactly know, does anybody ever really know 100% who they're getting into a relationship with, and, whether, that could be completely trusted. The headlines keep talking about like how much money this dude makes, like basically tens of millions of dollars a year. I think a lot of that is also royalties. And so of course he is prime pickings, and he doesn't come from, it doesn't seem like some Chebol family where, somebody with that much money usually has to be more of an arranged marriage, and so there's probably a lot more vetting by a lot of people. So in this type of situation, it's a bit dangerous for Pdogg, because he's suddenly a prime catch, which makes you a target for situations. Now, the reason why there's a real twist in this is that the main culprit that most people have been able to unearth, especially through the KakaoTalk data, was that the ringleader or one of the main bullies was Kim Ga Young, the fiance of Pdogg. However, the victim's family, remember they were saying that they were going to sue two people with a civil case, two of the bullies. Apparently that has dropped down to one, and where the victim's family also seemed to have said that, oh no, she is not one of the perpetrators. However, it just doesn't add up to the previous statements that the victim's family has given. So a lot of people are thinking like, okay, somehow they got paid off. And would Kim Ga Young have access to payoff type of money? And of course, if she is the fiance of somebody who's make tens of millions of dollars a year, and if she's thoroughly versed in the JIT tactics, then of course, she would probably find a way to have her man save her. We don't want to say that he's like an active co-conspirator at this point, but definitely you can kind of see how that could come about. Now, the other reason that it doesn't add up is that we do have already these interviews. So this reversal by the victim's family came a little bit all out of the sudden, out of the blue, and all of, the numbers aren't adding up. And the victim's mother even said, tearily, that we thought that the bullying would get better, like would resolve or decrease, and that her daughter's bullying situation would improve in the sense that she would be bullied less, because the main person, the main perpetrator is going to get married. She even said that, like, oh, like she's now going into like a good family. So unless there's another main perpetrator that she didn't seem to point the finger at, and if she's the one, with an engagement to some catch of a guy, then it doesn't add up. Now, we said previously that there's a quartet of 4 and that it seemed like there was like 6 weathercasters on the main team. Anna was one of the bullied, and then another junior was also bullied. But apparently in the entire cadre of freelance weathercasters at MBC's, the number could be about 20. So this is why, all these, details, facts, like kind of going back and forth. So potentially there might be somebody else. However, there have been reporters who have unearthed and even received the raw data of the Kakao Talk messages, and it seems as if that that we're still talking about the same people. Now, Dispatch also did this interview with the mother, and she also brought some receipts about a recorded conversation that she had with one of the weathercasters. And it was shady now that we know what happened and have been able to see the details. So the mother at that point had called one of the other weathercasters, not Miss Kim, but I believe it's a Miss Lee. And Miss Lee, turns out she was also one of the big bullies in the Kakao Talk chat room. However, when the mother and this Miss Lee, the weathercaster, talked, it seemed as if the mother was confiding in Ms. Lee, the main person. So Miss Lee was not the main person because the mother was telling Miss Lee, like, I can't believe this happened. Anna wanted to live, but she had been going through so much bullying for years. Every time she kept mentioning the main bully's name, and that was just imprinted in her. Now, the reason why that conversation was a bit shady, because it seemed like Ms. Lee would be on her side. Ms. Lee kind of had this like, oh my God, really? That's what happened? Oh my God, tell me what happened. And then Ms. Lee even said that she would, oh my gosh, now I have to tell the people over at MBC what happened. She didn't. She told the mother she was going to tell all of the MBC people, and apparently she didn't. Ms. Lee also said, like, oh my gosh, like, when can I go visit you later? She never visited. Ms. Lee didn't even show up to the funeral. So when the mother, before this little reversal, had said, like, like these people didn't even show up to the funeral. Some of the weathercasters did, and I believe it was the ones that, were on good terms with Anna or were also victims of bullying. But the perpetrator, the main 2 perpetrators did not go to the funeral. But the biggest part, where I kind of like picked up on the voice recording, and now it's been confirmed that, okay, that was shady, was that the mother, when she blurted the name of the main perpetrator, the Ms. Lee was like, oh wait, hold on, like as if she was like maybe on speakerphone and then conferring with somebody, and then she immediately came back like in a sort of a feigned, worried voice. Was there any other issue going on with Anna? Now that could have been legitimate concern, or to try to try to just ask, it could have been an innocent ask of like, well, you just, mom, you just said it was all because of the bullying, but was there anything else going on? But that whole kind of reversal, especially in the tone of it, made it seem as if she was just like, oh crap, we better find another solution here to pin this on instead of bullying and have it from the mom's mouth. And the mom said like, yeah, she was dealing with some other, she wasn't specific. She was just like, oh, she was going through a hard time, and she was even receiving treatment for it. So this whole, that part, wow, the fact that person that you thought like you could somewhat confide in, and then turns out to be one of the people who were your daughter's enemies, that is just spine chilling. So this has been covered by Dispatch, JTBC's crime chief, and also Coerced Research Institute. And they're all kind of piecing together the complete picture from different angles. And a lot of the source of their conclusions come from a lot of the chat room data. And for sure, it was a horrible situation where it seems as if she had been bullied for years and she was trying to gain the favor of these bullies to no end. The reason why I believe the mother and I believe the chat room and all that is that the bullies don't seem to have had a specific type of reason why they would continually degrade Anna, to the point where Anna went to, even more coaching for her presentation, and she was working other jobs. So remember how she's a freelancer and she was not being paid that much. So yes, the other income, one of the jobs that she did was to be a personal fitness trainer. And then also mom said, I found out she was even washing dishes and using a lot of this money to pay for her private coaching so that she could do much better on air. And there was never really specific feedback from these Kakao Talk messages from what I've seen pinpointing why she was bad, but kept saying you're bad, bad, bad. And then what you bullies usually do is that they're really pushing you so hard to fail. And then she couldn't fall asleep, so she got into this cycle of she had to take sleeping medication. That didn't really even work because she had to be on a 6 a.m. broadcast. And I've done that before. And you really have to sleep like a grandma or grandpa. Your bedtime has to be 8 p.m. And sometimes it's almost impossible to fall asleep at 8 p.m. And so she was doing all of these other jobs so that she can fall asleep better and also probably have another income source. And then that resulted in her sometimes being late, and that's when the bullies were saying oh, she smells like alcohol, because she had to drink, I guess, the night before in order to fall asleep. And then so you have what I call the community's acceptable going along with bullying, because they're oh, well, she's drinking or something like that. So you push them into, so this, Jezebel Institute, Treachery, okay, another tip, you push them into something where their behavior is going to then get you agreement with other people. And that becomes the main issue instead of your original bullying. And therefore you get, all this two birds with one stone manipulation situation. And then you get your JIT certificate for the semester. Now, looking at Anna's home life situation, I can see why she was a prime target of bullying, especially in a Korean cultural context. Usually when people are bullied, there has to be two factors. One is that they got to have something that you're jealous of or threatened by. So obviously she was pretty good at being a weathercaster. She was really good at, writing, going on that track and probably being competition for the other weathercasters, not just in the weathercaster space, but a lot of the times you're supposed to go, your goal is to be more of a TV personality. And so definitely Anna was, racking up those types of progressions in her career, which she should do. And then she's sort of forced to do as a freelancer. And it seems as if she had something there that they tried to push down. The other part of it is that you try to bully people who seem like they don't have, in Korean they call baek, your back. Who's got your back? So if you come from a good family, or if you have a good network, or fancy pants, then you have you're a bit more untouchable, because you try to rattle that person, you're rattling the people in their sphere, and then they can take measures to knock you down. But she was raised by a single mother divorced when little, and so that definitely creates a situation like, oh well, she probably doesn't have back, and it's easy to kind of shame her in some situations. But another reason why I think that there would be jealousies there is she was really close with her mother, and a lot of bullies, they don't seem to have good relations with their parents, and they're also jealous of people who have loving family. It might be just a single mother, but it was a very loving single mother. And that, again, creates that combination where somebody is going to really see as a prime candidate for bullying. And it also makes it easier to bully Anna because she's probably carrying around some shame. So she's probably devaluing a lot of her strengths and assets. Also, Anna looked like, so if you have nothing and if you don't have a back, a lot of talented people develop a back. They develop a network. They develop good relationships with colleagues and friends and just, people in your orbit. And it looked like Anna was really doing well, building up in that situation with, some other celebrities. Once you work in this broadcasting field, you're making new friendships and relationships that turn into other jobs and things like that. And that can be threatening to Jezebel Institute Treachery graduates. And so the game plan for the bullies is to try to nip her in the bud and stunt her growth. And that brings me to the sickening part of this is the lives you are willing to ruin because of jealousy and because of trying to succeed at the cost of other people instead of growing the pie or just competing on your own merits, where if it's part of your formula to sabotage your competition in that way to that point where essentially you're not delivering anything much better to the public or to the actual work product, but just being so vicious and treacherous, that is just so sickening to the core. Of course, it doesn't just happen in Korea, it's a worldwide phenomenon, but usually bullying does require the manipulation of a weak point in a social system institution. So if you just want to call it the world that you are in, that can be used to your advantage. And in this case, there's been a lot of criticism over the freelancer system rampant in Korean broadcasting. And mainly that is when we hear the stories about MBC, they're being wrapped up into. But I want to focus it more on why it's such a personal problem, because it starts to affect more than just the freelancers. The reason also why that's a weak point in the system is that a lot of times people are like, well, I'm not a freelancer, so kind of sucks for them, but I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, well, I'm sure the non-freelancers at MBC are really sweating in their pants right now or shaking in their boots. And the problem is that in Korea, with this, especially in the broadcasting world, is that you have the quote unquote regular employee. So in Korea, regular employee, you might think of that as more of a permanent employee. It's really, really, really hard to fire you, and you get all of the country's labor laws. And so there's a lot of built-in protections. With a freelancer, there are no protections. Now, if you're wondering like, okay, how does this compare to a lot of the labor contracts in the United States? Because I'm a regular wage employee, you may say, in the United States, but it's at will. So that means that you can be fired at any time. That at will portion is the main difference between Korea and the United States from what I've seen. So even if you are a salary employee with not an hourly wage, you can still easily get fired. That equivalent job situation in Korea, you gotta delete the at will part. And really, it's like I mean, if you want to get, no, nobody can fire you. On the other hand, the dysfunctional part of that is that because you can't fire anybody, you get people who should be fired but can't be fired. And then so they're really kicked out. There's a mass kicking out of people in these companies who have been clinging to their jobs like when they're in their 50s. So that's why you hear a lot of debates in Korea of this debate of raising the retirement age. And so what that really means is the legal age when you can just fire somebody and let them go because they've been literally almost like this barnacle on your company. From the other point of view, though, it creates job stability and it allows the economy to function because you're going to have a workforce and then consumers with a stable, pretty much guaranteed income. But that time period is essentially about 20 years. Like if you're going to be like ride or die for one company. And it's about 20 years, especially for guys. So like you get out of your military service, you really start at a company, and then maybe for 20 years you're pretty solid. So that's why I think there's also this embedded subconscious thing about the whole 빨리 culture, like hurry, is that you got to get so much done in these 20 years. Yes, they have raised the retirement age to perhaps, I believe, early 60s, depends. It always changes. But what I've heard in practice, that a lot of these big companies and their HR systems, the way that they're able to force you to go whenever, when they want you to go, is that they start messing up your performance reviews. And if your performance reviews, I guess, get to a certain point where it's so low, there may be grounds to fire you, or they start shifting you to locations that are so inconvenient. So the huge conglomerates have offices all over Korea, but everybody wants to be in Seoul. So you take somebody in Seoul and you send them out to the boondocks, and then you're really pressuring them to leave. Or what I've heard firsthand from somebody I know who works in that HR space, yes, they say like, look, well, we can send you down over there. And it's not even about manipulating their performance reviews. It's just that we're going to assign you to a division that just performs lower. It's just in the boondocks. So the productivity and what you can, highlight as your accomplishments is way less. So do you want to go through all of that turmoil, moving and shame and disgrace, or do you want this payout? So they'll usually have some extra payout to encourage you to leave. And so that creates some flexibility in the labor situation. But what I'm saying is that it's kind of barnacle-y. But the other way that has been balanced out in a lot of these situations is to hire people under freelance contracts, which is more at will. And the problem with that, it's manipulating and really degrading the freelance category. And you can get in trouble with this with the law, but a lot of times, firsthand experience, it's hard to even get the court to agree with you on that. So the problem happens when you hire somebody under the freelance category because you want to be able to fire them easily, not pay for their health insurance and all that kind of stuff, but work them and expect them to be present at the office just like a regular employee. Again, what we went over is that a true freelancer essentially could just email in their work after it's all done on the agreed upon due date. But if you have to be in the studio every day, you have to attend all the work meetings, you have like a work email, you have a workstation, then you're like a regular employee. A true freelancer would never, in the MBC case, would never have an MBC.com email address. However, all these things can be manipulated in the court of law. I've been hired under freelance contract. I've had my email addresses with the company's email, phone extension, my desk at work. I was using their computers. All these things become a part of, whether you are being used or not, and used as a regular employee, but just given a freelance contract. And so this is where it becomes a bit of a horrible situation, because there's an easier path for bullying to happen and not have any kind of consequences from it. Even MBC, the company, it seems like right now, even after all of this, legally, if you really kind of look through it, what kind of legal punishments can they get? Already right now, they're having to try to get adjacent criminal laws on the applied to this situation. So it's not a perfect fit. If she were a regular employee, permanent employee, in other words, all of the labor protections would happen, and it's just like very clear what MBC's culpability is in this as well. But I'm saying, like, let's focus on like why the system itself is creating this horrible opportunity for such malfeasance to occur and then to just be shoved under the rug. Now, in the United States, like, let's say you are like a radio host and you only have like an hour or two that you show up to the station or whatnot, or if you're performing, we have these unions. So there's like Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, which is American Federation of Television and Radio Artists for stage and live performance. It's Actors Equity Association and IATSE. And so these unions seem to be able to create that sort of stability for people who are under these performance contracts. So in Korea, there is no such thing for the freelancers. Even the health insurance in the United States, if you're under these, that kind of working scenario where you show up for an appearance or performance, or like you're a host and you're not you're not under a salary of that station, then you get your health insurance from this union. And so that creates sort of like a mothership, but there's none of that in Korea. And moving forward, this debate has never been able to be resolved because, like I said, there's such a barnacle system with the permanent employee situation that freelancers, in a way, is like the release valve for a more flexible labor market. But I think what needs to happen is that you have to really admit that there is a hybrid. There's like true freelancers, like, I need a graphic design for this the skincare product, and you just basically hire a freelancer and they get you to the design whenever the design is done, and you pay them. And then this other category of these weathercasters, who in theory aren't supposed to be there for like an 8-hour workday, but a lot of times it is, but then allowing them to do other work, that there is a whole huge hybrid category of freelance/employees. And so either changing the labor laws to include them, or to create a strong system where they have like a union that represents more of the freelancers and create some sort of stability. I'm not saying that, all of the unions that I mentioned about in America are like 100% good, but at least there is decades of trying and tweaking, and there's also like debate and conflict that hopefully has created better and better situations, but at least it's there and they're working on it. But in Korea there really is none. I think there's like little small organizations, but they don't really have this clout and power the way that the unions in the United States have, where like everybody in their membership like are it's essentially like, you mess with one, you mess with them all. And so in the groups that I've seen in Korea, they're so small and they don't really have that sort of like industry-wide power to really affect anything on that level that really protects the freelancers. So this is just a huge drama with this like JIT chessboard, like with many different groups and factions all in play. But what it does really look like is that, the traditional JIT kind of maneuvers behind the scenes are going on, along with a big corporation trying to wiggle out of its responsibility. But in the grand scheme of things, it's the system itself that needs reforming, because it creates all of these scenarios where conflicts, and then in this case, tragedies, can happen. And maybe there can be, a whole kumbaya Sky Castle moment. I just recently saw some of the episodes of Sky Castle again. I was like, wow, this is very resonant, because if there is this pocket of gray area where people are vulnerable, there will be, kid you not, there will be somebody, some JIT graduate who will step up to the plate and not have any problems with ruining somebody else's life just so that they can have a chance at getting a little bit more in a corrupt system. Sky Castle, I think the true K-drama of it, the gritty truth of it, definitely showed the reality of the dysfunction of like this fixation on success, where you also incorporate ruining other people's lives. The other part was still K-drama, but more of the fantasy romanticized version of like all those people who were willing to ruin other people's lives. They do not make an about face and come to Jesus that quickly, if at all, ever. So that part where they try to wrap everything up in a bow and make, people feel like immediately they're like sorry about what they did, I don't think that's as much of a reality, but then it's definitely, K-drama fantasy. But the K-drama realness is, I think, like what a lot of people go to those for. And unfortunately, a lot of times it is based on the real drama in Korea. All right, guys, what do you think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.